thanks everyone for joining and holding tight with us until the demo. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So for those that are new to the product, this is the workspace part of your environment. This is just essentially the homepage. I know some of my clients have joined here as well, so hopefully I don't disappoint them as well, and hopefully they already know this information. But for prospects, this is where your data resides. You can see it's similar to a normal share drive in the sense that you have folders that categorize your individual types of reports. You can have Excel files, PowerPoint files, as you can see on your DataRails workspace. And you'll see down the left-hand column, this environment has been built out because it's a demo environment, but this could be built out similarly for your tasks and financial reporting. And apologies if I'm not looking directly at the camera here, I'm using a second screen. So this can be built out for your environment specific to your organizational needs within DataRails. Now, what we're going to cover today is the budget process flow feature. So I'm going to take you through those specific files that I'm going to be utilizing through that process flow feature. What we're going to need for the process flow is an input, a mapping, and an output. And then your budget templates will fit in there as well. So as we run through the process, you can think about it in terms of your own individual process, start to finish, just understanding what goes into the process, how do we categorize those, whether it be a chart of accounts mapping table or something like that. And then my individual, maybe it's regional, maybe it's departmental budget templates, and then ultimately my output. Where is all of that information consolidated? Potentially it's consolidated into a final budget template. I think I've labeled mine in this presentation, final budget. But maybe you have one or two of these. It can be as many as you really need within the system. So I'll go into reports first, and you'll see my final budget resides in here. Reports is going to be any downstream reporting and output within DataRails. And we can just click here to download the latest into Excel. So like Shoshana said, we try to base everything in DataRails around the familiarity with Excel. So you'll have the ability to take this off of the web platform into Excel to work in Excel with the DataRails add-in. So I'll go back to home. And if I go to actuals here, budget here, I have my budget actuals. So I have a comparative income statement here, and I have a trial balance here. These are crucial because they'll be inputs into my process. So these can be either uploaded to DataRails through an API integration with most ERP systems, or you can simply manually upload an Excel or CSV file onto the system to put either of these in. Now I'll take you through the actual new feature that we have here. You can see I've called mine Consolidated Budget. And if we want to access it, we're going to go to My Processes up here, and we're going to go to Consolidated Budget. You can see we have other process flows, which is a kind of a vague term here that we've used for the feature as an accumulation and a task management system. So this is essentially consolidating all of your data that's on DataRails and putting it into a given process that your team runs. So if we start from input here, we have our Consolidated Budget 2022 feature. My inputs, I've specified my inputs as, like we just went over, my trial balance and my comparative income statement. And what DataRails is telling us now is that my data is fully updated for the most recent period that it expects to see my data. So I've updated it on actually this morning. This sign-off feature allows management to go in and sign off on the actual uploads. So you can just make sure that the integrity of your data is good and the inputs that are going into your process are what you would expect. And then you're able also to lock these file boxes. So there's various permission settings within DataRails. If you don't want anyone else touching this and you're the owner of this process, you'll be able to lock these so nobody else can alter this. But this is essentially the input part of the process. Now, if I continue to mapping, like we talked about earlier, the mapping step's mostly going to comprise a chart of accounts, department level mapping, anything that you want to tell the system to categorize your data into certain fields. So we're just using a chart of accounts here. You'll see that the binocular icon comes up to signify that this is a mapping table. So this is taking the account numbers within my inputs, and it's assigning additional description columns to those. to those data sources. And like we said, we have the sign-off feature, and we have the ability to add additional mapping tables if we need any more. It doesn't just have to be one. This can have as many mapping files as you need to complete your process. Now, this is where the real part comes in, where we feel like this adds to your budgeting process. So what we have here is all of the budgets, your regional budgets in this instance, but they can be department level budgets as well, or however you structure your individual budgeting process. And what I've done is when I click into this icon for the first time, I've uploaded my collection templates, and I just need to assign a budget owner to them. You can see I've assigned myself for the first one, and I've assigned a demo user to the bottom 4. For your organization, you can have as many templates as you'd like. If you have 40 departments, you can have 40 departments here. You can have all of your department owners listed as assignees on those. And the power of this is that once you assign them to this given budget template, they're actually going to get an email from DataRails that's going to say, hey, Will's requested you to go in and update your given budget template. So for example, your sales department, your head of sales would click on the email that they get. It would take them directly to DataRails. And it would actually, as they click that email, it would show you as the budget process owner that they've come in and they've actually started to work on it. So this in progress icon would come up. Now I'll transition over to the icons in general. So you can see, we'll start from the beginning here. You can see I just have one that's labeled as not started. This means I've sent them the template through my consolidated process within DataRails, but they haven't actioned it yet. Submitted, you can see that you've sent them the template and that they've actually come back on it and they've submitted a new version in DataRails for your review. Now, if we go from submitted over here, once a budget template is back into DataRails and has been marked as submitted, myself as the budget owner of this process will now have the ability to come in and you can approve and lock it. You can reject it. You'll have the ability to preview it within the system or download the template yourself. So all fairly handy features, and this kind of helps in the collaboration and the communication aspect, because the system is handling the email traffic for you, and it's telling the folks on the other end of your departmental or your regional budgets to come into the system and update them themselves. So we're trying to eliminate that multiple versions and communication issues there. So no longer will you have to dig through your email for this. This is something that the system is going to handle. Now, if I click approve and lock on this, what it actually gives me is the ability to email that user. So I can put in my own custom email. This looks good. And I'll be able to send that to them. So I click OK. The actual budget template goes to approve, and my budget owner, who's this demo person right here, will get an email saying, this looks good. Your budget looks good. Thanks for setting that up. If I go to reject, I'll have the ability to do a similar email here, but instead I can say, can you please update this? And you could give them specifics on the actual nature of the updating. And when I hit send here, it will actually go from submitted to in progress. So the system recognizes that you don't have what you need in here, or maybe there's an update that gets passed down from management that you need to go from approved to rejected and send them an email and tell them the nature of the adjustment in there. You'll have the ability to do that and manage that from the system, which we feel like is the real value add of this feature for folks. So I think we've covered most of the statuses here for each of these items. And please, if you have any questions, I know we're going through this at a high level, so please post them in the chat. But these are kind of the statuses that your individual budget templates will go through. And what we really wanted to highlight is you as the budget owner of this will have the ability to permission it and approve and review all from the platform, with all of the email managed by DataRails. So this was the collection management screen. And once we've approved everything and we're happy with where everything sits in the system, and we want to ultimately produce that final budget template, we'll click next. Now I've put in my final budget template and I put in my final budget presentation as two outputs of this process. What does that mean? It means that the system is now taking my inputs, my mapping, and my collection templates, and I've assigned mappings to those in the system. So it's just updating the data. It's using the logic that it already has to refresh that information in both of these templates. So one thing we'll touch on after we go through the final budget template is the fact that we do have a PowerPoint add-in as well that will allow you to refresh visuals in your PowerPoint. Instead of copying and pasting each time, you'll have the ability to paste it once in, and you'll hit the refresh within the DataRails ribbon to update that information. So I can do complete and share reports here. And what this does is it sends an email to everyone involved with this process that, okay, we've completed the final budget. If you want to download them from here, you'll have the ability to. You'll also be sent an email to notify you that the final budget is prepared. And you'll be able to add and subtract people that are involved with the process just in this window right here. So you can see I only have 3 involved. They're all as owners of the process, which means they essentially have edit view on the process, and they're able to come in and switch things up with the process. Whereas viewers, think of someone like management, where they might be able to view the whole process and see what happens and get the output of the process at the end, but they're not allowed to edit any of the process themselves. That would have to be handled by someone like the finance team who would potentially own this process. So now that we've done complete and share, I can take you through my final budget template, and you can see this would upload, and I would have the ability to refresh this within DataRails. Now, the other output would be a PowerPoint presentation. So if you have your 2022 budget presentation ready, I'm hoping everyone has gotten to this point already, but just for review and for demoing the feature, what I've done is I've created a slide on revenue and cost of goods sold budget. Essentially what I've done is this is a live link to what we have in this spreadsheet. So I've just taken this part of the spreadsheet. I've utilized the DataRails publish feature to publish this on to DataRails itself. And I've created a live link to the PowerPoint presentation. So what I'll now be able to do within the PowerPoint presentation is, like I said, instead of recopying and pasting this for each iteration of your budget presentation to, I don't know, say your board of directors, I'll be able to refresh this each time for any changes in the underlying spreadsheet. But that's kind of a high level of what we're doing with this PowerPoint add-in, and then the budget flow process. I know people probably have questions, so we can open it up for questions now, Shoshana, but that's kind of a high level of the budget process. And like Shoshana said, if you're a new prospect and this is something that really intrigues you, please get in touch. And if you're a current client, please get in touch with your customer success manager if you think this is a feature that could really help you add value to your budgeting process. So thank you, everyone.